Hey, you want to watch some TV or something?
Skip it. Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Nothing but foul language and toilet humor.
I'm disgusted and repulsed and I can't look away.
I need these things! I need these things! Tell me, do you want to go? Where it's covered in all the color lights. Oh, no way, Jose.
This just in, go to hell!
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!
Hello, friends and listeners. You've got Watch Skip Plus in your ears and your eyes, because now we're on YouTube. My name is Cupcake, also known as Jose, Machine Gun Jelly, Jam and Jelly. I am Emcee-less today. He had a tough week at work, but he's still helping to edit. And I don't think this movie that we were going to review was really his thing, although he does like horror films. And so I have brought back the OG co-host, Red, Justin, aka Justin the Red, and
Justin the Red, Cinemasochist,
the Cinemasochist. That was the nickname to begin with. Okay.
Yeah, and considering how the last time this episode went, because this is a sequel to an episode we did, maybe you're the Cinemasochist this time. But we'll see.
I could be. There is the so we are reviewing Terrifier 3. Yes, and the actor who plays the serial killer here, Art the Clown, is played by David Howard Thornton. And curiously enough, because this movie has a Christmas theme, he also played the Mean One, which was a slasher horror film, part of this sort of like public domain type horror films that you're seeing coming out, like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. And then I think I just saw the Screamboat preview before Terrifier 3. But I still have not forgiven Red for getting us all to watch the Mean One, because oh god, that movie was
you were laughing at it a lot with me though, so I think we had a good time, just not in the way that the film intended, which is the Cinemasochist special.
It is in fact the Cinemasochist special. So for those who don't know, he used to pod as the Cinemasochist. And so what Red would do is see films that were, I mean, just from off the bat, you knew it was going to be terrible. Like think like Asylum, think like super low budget horror film, Grindhouse stuff, maybe not Grindhouse stuff, but and then he would review it. And so that was kind of the theme, as in he's a Cinemasochist. He's willing to watch all of this stuff.
To make it easier for you folks, if you remember the Breaking Bread episodes, the Not a Bomb, which I love to be able to listen to, all of those types of movies I gleefully watched on my own. Like I saw all the Ginger Dead Mans. I saw, well, not all, but most of the Evil Bong type movies. Those I would like willingly go into. And I was sending Troy like a whole list of like, you should do this, you should do that, you should break him with this. And he was like, all right, calm down.
Oh my God, we watched BC Butcher for that series, and that broke me. I was like, I cannot continue to watch this. It's been filmed in someone's backyard, and it's
oh, you do. I could get you some shout on video stuff to go along with that. That is very, very hard. Could show you Las Vegas Bloodbath. Was that the one? There's a couple of Las Vegas ones that were poorly shot.
Well, we are so happy to have you back on. We started August 2022 together. This is amazing. And so now that we've jumped to video, because this is episode 101, can you believe that?
Woo!
Crazy. Yeah. So now that we've jumped to video and I have you, if you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, leave a comment if you can. I think this is basically our third video, essentially. Last week, our 100th episode was Joker Folie à Deux. Hopefully, you guys have seen that. If you're listening to us on Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, Apple, wherever it is, please also follow, like, subscribe, comment, do all the fun things that you do. Because when you comment, like, subscribe, that gets us out there into the cloud. And so
Now, just real quick, when you said hopefully you've all seen that, did you mean your review of it or the movie itself? Because if it's the latter, most people had not seen the newest Joker, judging by its box office.
I know. And I've been reading some really interesting analysis articles about it, about how, yeah, it was completely unexpected, but that's, Cheeto.
Yes,
He's
we
like,
have.
Dad, pay attention to me. All right, so let's start. Q and Alex hot shot. I'm gonna catch you off guard here, Red. So we do a little icebreaker question, Q and Alex. Alex obviously being MC. What do you think makes a good horror icon?
Ooh, a good horror icon. I think the two immediates that come to mind are definitely a look, because I think you need to have, Art the Clown obviously looks like a clown. I think that helps him a lot. But, Freddy's got the fedora, the hat. Jason, I mean, it would have been probably iconic either way, but I think that hockey mask kind of like solidified him, just having that big hulking beast. Michael, this, faceless mask basically, goes well with that. But I'd also say the performance. And I know a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, for somebody like a Freddy, that's easy to say because it makes him iconic, or a Doug Bradley doing Pinhead. But even like your Jasons and your Michaels, and to a different degree, Art the Clown, because he very much gets to at least act with his face, David Howard Thornton does. But I mean, I think Kane Hodder kind of showed people when he would continually come back to Jason Voorhees that even though it's basically what we could boil it down to is walking around, like hulking around, basically, there's a lot of little body movements that matter that I think make it stand out more. Because you see so many of these, slasher movies trying to make their horror icons. I mean, I remember there was one in the 90s called Funny Man that was kind of like a jester. And then I just watched the other night, The Jester, which Shudder put out, I think, last year, which was a film adaptation of a short that the untrained eye might say it's just a Terrifier clone, because it's this creepy clown jester that haunts people on Halloween night. But I think the other aspect too that just helps is sometimes I think you just fall into it. Like anytime you think of these movies, like pretty much every horror icon, it's not like they set out to make this is going to be the next horror icon. Maybe Art the Clown might have been that intention. I don't know. But Wes Craven didn't have a whole Nightmare on Elm Street franchise in mind. He just wanted to do the one and done. I'm sure when they made Friday the 13th, they didn't think they were going to do a sequel, let alone obviously let the kid take over the mantle. Spoilers for the first one. It was Jason's mother.
Oh, God.
Same with,
Red,
obviously,
how could you?
Obviously with Halloween, because even when they were still trying to make that into a series, John Carpenter was trying to pivot to more of a, well, let's focus on Halloween, the holiday, as opposed to Michael Myers. And that at the time did not go well, but maybe it could work nowadays. I think the closest you're going to get would be Trick or Treat, which you could still have your icon in Sam, but work wraparound. But yeah, I think it really just comes down to a mixture of performance and look, because if you have a cheesy looking or a cheap looking horror icon or villain, it's not really going to work, I don't think. And two, I think the other thing is you just kind of have to fall into it, because even somebody like a Jigsaw, which is a more unique, because I know Billy the Puppet is kind of the look, but that one is not what you would think of as a horror icon, because it's more on the lines of, you'd almost say like a Hannibal Lecter, more thriller, which is why I think it kind of stands. But again, that's something that they didn't expect to get a whole series out of. And they clearly didn't, because I thought, well, by the third one, we're done. So we're killing off Jigsaw. And then Lionsgate's like, no, they didn't make more of these. But also Tobin Bell's fantastic. So figure out a way to keep him in these.
Yes, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right about that. I think the look is obviously key, right? I mean, it's, if it looks stupid, people aren't going to champion something that looks stupid, right? You want something that's like eye-catching. Definitely performance. I think some of the horror icons, at least the ones who talk, like I feel like there's the silent ones, your Jasons, your Michael Myers, your Art the Clowns, and then you've got the quippy, jokester ones like Freddy and Chucky, obviously. God, I love Chucky.
Oh, same here. I can't believe I didn't
also-
mention him. I'm sorry, Brad, Dara.
Also, R.I.P. Don Mancini. They canceled the series, but I am
Yeah.
praying it gets shopped somewhere. Netflix, Sci-Fi.
I think he
Peacock.
said he was also, even with this, he was thinking of soon ending the series and going back to another movie to culminate it all. So I don't know if that accelerated it, but like I would be surprised if someone doesn't pick that back up because it's a good IP. I mean, IPs are all the rage, so you would want that. Even if it ends up just being something for streaming, I'm kind of surprised they didn't just go that route, because wouldn't USA falls into the Peacock territory. So I'm kind of surprised.
It would be Universal. I was thinking Peacock, Sci-Fi. But who watches Sci-Fi anymore?
Well, that's the thing. They would air those episodes on Sci-Fi concurrently, so it's kind of surprising they didn't just say, "Hey, if you want to do another season, just finish it off over at Sci-Fi instead of USA." So
yeah, well, I think then the budget, because USA used to have a ton of shows and budgets, but anyway, we digress. Gressing back to the horror icons, and I think the big thing you just hit on, which is no one ever, well, maybe some people do set out to make like a horror franchise, but you just never know what's going to capture the pop culture zeitgeist or puncture the pop culture zeitgeist or capture people's attention, and then become an icon, Yeah,
I feel like the ones where it seems like they're trying to do that, and sometimes maybe they're just parodying the idea, but when you think of like a Shocker, or a Dr. Giggles, it's almost as if you did it too hard, is that why it fell apart? It's interesting bringing this up because I do kind of get the feeling Art the Clown was probably, maybe Leone thought this will be my horror icon, but then again, I don't know, because he was just part of a short in an indie anthology film called All Hallows Eve, and that was the one that most people took to, like, hey, the movies and stuff, they were but Art the Clown was creepy. So even then, I don't know if Leone had an idea. And I mean, we'll see times change, but I know he said he plans on only doing one more because he doesn't want to oversaturate. So maybe he never did have this idea. Again,
sure
he could just be saying that because that'll sell, because if people think, oh, the fourth one will be the last one. That's, old Hollywood for you tactic. But
Leone has some showmanship, I will tell you. And if you can hear the contempt in my voice, you can hear the contempt in my voice. Okay, so I forgot to mention WatchKit Plus, as you and I had conceived it, is a movie review podcast with a lifestyle twist. And so that twist is a bonus review before we start talking about the movie proper. Those are our pluses. Red, for your wonderful return, what is your plus?
Okay, so, but I guess you could say a mini bonus plus is you and I talked last week on now for something a little bit different when we reviewed our last Oliver Reed film for his spotlight being The Assassination Bureau. But I had mentioned on there when we were going up where we were watching, it is spooky season. And for me, it's more about not just horror movies because year round, but films set on Halloween, which, I mean, I guess there is still a part of it with Terrifier 3, but moving it to Christmas, even though I get it, slightly irks me because I was liking having a Halloween franchise again, but I digress. But I am watching a lot of movies set on Halloween, and that can always be a crapshoot. I mentioned last week I did Halloween Friends, which was not a good anthology movie, or more or less the wraparounds were pretty terrible. I've even watched another killer clown movie called On Halloween, which was dreadful. That was set on Halloween. But I'm not going to plus those. What I'm plussing was a pleasant surprise, and I can't remember what the buzz was around this, I think last year, because it had a title that's we're getting a lot of these types of movies, and it's called Kids versus Aliens. So we're getting so many of these Amblin type flashbacks, and, I think Destroy All Neighbors was one, but this one definitely kind of felt like an Attack the Block. But I threw this one on, and I know you just did that, but I'm going to be honest with you, this surprisingly charmed me.
It's the wrestling connection.
Well, one, definitely, and it is why I am plussing it. Just be more specific, is because I didn't know there was going to be a wrestling connection. But I don't know. This isn't no great shakes. I think a lot of it's, plot beats of, the kids being bullied, the sister going with the jock asshole. Those are kind of like, they're a little bit too pat and familiar and kind of iffy, but I don't know. I kind of like the cast here. I enjoyed the kids well enough, which is weird because sometimes I usually don't. I thought they were kind of charming. And I think what helped, even though I will say the aliens, it could have been any monster. I will say they needed to better define why it was aliens. Like usually it would have maybe been too cheap, but have them be more obsessed with aliens than dinosaurs and stuff, because I was half expecting like the dinosaurs to come back. But I liked the look of the aliens a lot, and I kind of thought that final set piece was fun. But the movie is short. I think you take out the credits, it's I think 68 minutes. So I think that kind of helps with some of the pacing. I'm not gonna say this was great by any means, and some of it was definitely helped by the fact that there was a wrestling connection I had no, knowledge of, or if I heard about it, I completely forgot in the year or two it's come out. I can't remember when this dropped. But I will say maybe it also helps that I've been watching garbage like on Halloween and Halloween Friends. And actually this one wasn't even that bad, but Halloween. So this one was that one was surprisingly not that bad. That one actually had some production values and had Simon Rex in it. But again, I go into some of these. Yeah, Simon Rex, had Jason Mewes, Danny Trejo. It actually had a pretty good cast. I only
need a crossover with Evil Bong.
I'm surprised they might want to eventually, but that actually wasn't. That was a little bit better than I was expecting. Still not great, but again, I've been watching so many of these not well made movies set on Halloween, because as much as I love horror films, it's very easy now. That's an easy sell. Clearly, it's just to set your horror movie on Halloween, and in some of them, even the ones that aren't good, they at least try. But I don't feel like, I'll go back to ragging on Halloween. I don't feel that they did a good job in actually making it feel like it was meant to be on Halloween. So at least Kids vs. Aliens did that. But I don't know. This one caught me off guard. It actually kind of charmed me. I was originally kind of turned off just because I'm going to as much as I love the Amblin type movies, it's hard to make that work. And there's just been such an influx of them. But I don't know. I know you did the, but hey, I actually was kind of charmed by this one. So
nice. Where can we find this?
I watched it on Hulu. I don't know if it's on any other streaming. I mean, I guess technically Disney Plus maybe then as well, if you have that bundle. But I watched it on Hulu.
We should probably mention this is directed by Jason Eisner, who, as people know, shot to fame because of his Hobo with a Shotgun. But I should also mention that my future husband's anthology VHS, bingo, Adam Wingard, for VHS 2, Eisner directed Slumber Party Alien Abduction, of which this has a little bit of that feel, maybe just expanded a little bit more. But I have to say that the extremely saturated colors of the film, it has a very unique look, but I'm going to say it just reminded me too much of, God, what was that movie? And I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to bring it up during our review of Terrifier 3. Was it Bloody Christmas?
Bloody Christmas. I actually was thinking about that. I felt it looked better than that, at least. I think it did a better job of that, because I hated that look, Christmas Bloody Christmas.
It did.
I will say, though, I did not watch this one completely blown up on my giant screen, just on a TV, so maybe that's why I'm feeling that way.
Okay,
but I didn't mind that look as much here. I mean, obviously, in that the last set piece, it definitely started to look like that. Maybe that's why, too, because the majority of Christmas Bloody Christmas looked like that, whereas I feel like a good chunk of Kids vs. Alien just kind of looked glossy, but...
That stupid... So, I'm sorry. The Joe Bagos movie we're talking about, Christmas Bloody Christmas...
which we reviewed.
Yes, which we did review. Yet another unforgivable red moment. But yeah, that movie looked like it was filmed inside someone's anus. And so I'm going to segue into my plus, which is...
Is that something to do with anuses?
It does not have anything to do with anuses. But so I call my mouth the $6 million mouth. I'm keeping it PG, I promise. I call it a $6 million mouth because I've had a lot of dental work, a lot of crowns, a lot of root canals. I'm just bad with this like hygiene thing. And so what I just discovered was that since I'm 50, people, I've been grinding my teeth because I'm a stressor, right? I hold all my stress in. And they were like, you really need a night guard, which, I've always thought, why don't I just buy like the sports thing and do that or whatever? But it's not the same, folks. But night guards are very, very expensive. I don't even think they're covered by dental insurance, or if they are, it's like 10%, and it ends up being, $400, $500. So I was Googling, since it's my favorite hobby. Shout out to the Monopoly alphabet. Anyway, so there's something called BNG. Yay, I get to do the YouTube thing with the shield. Form of
The real reason
Tyrannosaur. Form of Tyrannosaur, Power Rangers. So this is the BNG Brux Night Guard. I went online. So bruxism is the scientific technical term for grinding your teeth. And essentially it's, I think it costs like $60 or something like that. You don't have to replace it, but it's basically a very tiny mouth guard, and it only goes, you can see where the gel lining is, and it only goes on either the top or the bottom. I don't know, serendipity, I chose the bottom. But you basically
Did we just learn a little bit about Jose there?
You might have. By the way, I'm in a community theater production of the Vita, and there was a part where we were rehearsing a song, and the tenors break up into like top tenors and bottom tenors, and it led to the wonderful moment of me being confused and screaming out, "Wait, am I a bottom?" Which I thought was hysterical. So basically, you boil this thing, the gel lining, you bite down hard on it. You have to like bite really hard for like a minute, which is a lot tougher than people think. And then you just stick it on, and then you go to bed. So it feels a little uncomfortable.
Do the entire episode with that in your mouth. It'll be interesting. See if people can you win a prize, folks, if you knew what Jose was saying.
So it does feel a little uncomfortable. It takes about a week to get used to. I did have some trouble with it in terms of sleeping, so it was, kind of crazy, but it works. You can see the station in some ways, so it's not bad. Sorry, it's not bad, and it only costs. I want to say the whole total cost was probably like $69 plus shipping or whatever.
It's much cheaper than because granted, I would have to ask my parents, but I know when I had to have when I was younger a mouth guard because I used to grind. That was not covered by their insurance. I know that because I know it was pricey because I would hear that all the time. You better take good care of those, that mouth guard. And if you lose it or if you, anything with it, because I used to break my glasses sometimes as an asshole on purpose, other times just because I was a clumsy kid. But, that stuff's not cheap. I can sympathize with them as an adult.
It's definitely not cheap. And you and I have discussed before also how I really don't like putting things in holes in my body, and so
which surprised me. I thought of the opposite.
We don't know where is this headed. And you can see I'm actually wearing like Soundcore open ear earbuds, which I love because again I don't like things in my ears. But Soundcore, speaking of Soundcore, which is part of the Anchor company, Anker, they have just created the new Sleep I want to say it's called A24, but it's a brand new model. So you can also see this here. But basically what these are sleep buds that you can put in your ears and sleep with. So if you roll over on the pillow, it's not a bulky kind of like thing. And then I'm going to show this. So you can see it actually has like these wings to help keep it in your ears. And then you've also got these soundproof tips to sort of like block the noise out. And so you can play white noise on this. It also kind of does like sleep data. And that's better than there's other sleep apps that you basically keep the phone near you. And I don't know how accurate this is, but this actually measures how many times I roll over. And apparently the first night I used this, I rolled over like 44 times. Whatever. I felt like Shamu or like a stick, just like rolling over and over and over. So it's pretty nice, especially if you like to go to sleep to like white noise so that you're not annoying your partner. Obviously, I have a husband. We share a bed together. And it also has an alarm. And so the alarm is actually really effing good at waking me up, which is great. Now, the only problem is these keep coming out of my ears. And I don't know if it's because maybe subconsciously I'm like clawing at my ear or something like that, but generally they're coming out of my ears. I got to fix that. But Yeah, I think these retail at like 120 maybe, but I love them. They're great. You can also use them if you're working and use the white noise as well. There's no microphones in this, so you can't really use it to double as like a pod or like calling. Oh, you're like Siegfried and Roy over. Which one are
Yeah.
you? Are you Siegfried?
Uh,
Or are you Roy?
I'm Roy, I think.
Yes.
You can't have my
So
coffee.
that is my plus. And into now that you've let the cat go, into our movie review proper. This is Terrifier 3. It is a sequel to Terrifier, as well as then 5 years later, I believe. So Terrifier, I think, came out in, I want to say, what, 2019? Oh, God, it's
I guess
2016, actually.
was it 2016? Was that
Yeah.
long ago?
2016. And then because the director and the writer, Damien Leone, and we'll get to him, because he was self-financing and doing Indiegogo for Terrifier 2, which came out in 2022, it had taken years to actually film it because he was actually doing his own special effects for it. And so they would film a scene, they would have to stop, rig up whatever it was that they wanted to conceive and then reshoot it. I took a bullet for the team and I listened to the commentary for Terrifier 2, and he sort of goes into the fact that he's like, oh, this shot was shot 2 years later. God bless our editors. It looks great or whatever. And I'm like, huh, how did I not catch that before? Maybe because I didn't like it so much. But anyway, Terrifier 3, this is the third in the sequel. Our writer-director is Damien Leone. There's not a lot on him. I was trying to scour interviews. He doesn't talk a lot about his previous work before this, but basically he's a special effects makeup artist. He was inspired by Tom Savini. For those of you who don't know Tom Savini, he is a special effects makeup artist, came to fame with things like Maniac, Friday the 13th, inspired a legion of makeup artists, sits head and shoulders with people like Dick Smith, Rick Baker. If you don't know who these people are, you should find out because they're amazing makeup effects artists. And so he has done several films for a production company called Ruthless Pictures. And those films include things like Frankenstein versus the Mummy, Day of the Mummy, something called like The Black Vampire or something like that. And then he'd done a bunch of shorts. One short was Terrifier, which featured the Art the Clown character. That was actually played by another actor. And I feel really bad for this actor because I thought David Howard Thornton, who plays Art the Clown in Terrifier 2 and 3, and 1, actually, I'm sorry, 1, 2, and 3, he didn't originate the role. There's an actor named Mike Gianelli, I believe, who played Art in the Terrifier short that Damien put together, and then All Hallows Eve, which Red referenced, which was sort of like a Halloween anthology, and one of the little stories featured Art the Clown as well, and thus birthed the idea of a horror franchise based around Art the Clown. And so he's writing and directing this. He has brought back basically the same crew. So we're talking about producers like Phil Falcone, Brad Miska, who's part of the Bloody Disgusting, and then a gentleman named George Stuber, who is the co-producer, but he's also the DP. Stuber worked on some of those Ruthless Pictures films with Damien Leone. It's why they have that shorthand together. And obviously he's a co-producer on the Terrifier shows. Stuber has done like music videos and things like that and other shorts, but nothing like super huge in terms of films. The aforementioned Frankenstein versus Mummy. Again, he's done shorts, All Hallows Eve, and then he did 3 episodes on something called Crash the System, which sounds rather interesting. It looks like it's a series that's available on Prime and Tubi, but it says the logline goes, an unwilling man becomes a pawn to the weapons tech industry and decides to fight against it. I don't know. And then our music is by Paul Wiley. Again, they're kind of a crew that sort of like works together. But he has gone on to compose for other films and shorts, things like And They Call It Puppy Love. I'm not even going to click on that. Bury the Bride, Macabre Mountain. And then a film called Stream, which is due to come out very soon, actually. It's going to be a streaming film. It stars Jeffrey Combs and Danielle Harris.
I actually have seen it. They played it in theaters back in August.
Oh, nice.
I was more iffy on it, but it definitely is similar. And like a lot of its kills are kind of similar to what you're going to get with a Terrifier, where it's very absurd and gross. I do know I saw it with a friend who wasn't the biggest fan of the first Terrifier, so he liked that one more. It has a lot of horror icon cameos, which is kind of fun, but also kind of, we get it.
Eye
these
rolling.
people. But I don't know, the concept was fine with this, even though not too, original, the idea that we're streaming these murders. I just didn't care too much for the family in that movie, like my friend did, but it's okay. It was all right. It was kind of fun. And I know that definitely seems like one they want to keep. They heavily hinted towards sequels at the end. So I could see that one trying to be another franchise. I only knew it was fine because my friend called it out, but that one did not get I guess you could say the Terrifier 2 treatment, where the success of Terrifier 2 and not Terrifier 3 didn't seem to translate because Leone did the effects or at least helped with the effects on that movie. So it didn't quite go to that. So I think while it's nice that we're in the, sinking ships or whatever, the tide makes everyone rise. I forget the old saying. It still seems to be mainly isolated to Art the Clown right now. But we'll see if other brand, and I guess the Winnie the Pooh horror movies.
Winnie the Pooh. Yes. But thank God there's not been a mean one too. Thank Christ.
I guarantee they're probably going to do it.
But okay, so stream, yes, as you mentioned, Leone's effects crew provided the effects for that. As you also mentioned, there are horror cameos in here. I mean, I'm looking at like Tim Curry, Dee Wallace, and Art the Clown shows up in this. The very gorgeous, but he's always sort of demented, so he looks weird. Bill Moseley. They're in it as well. And Daniel Roebuck, who also shows up in this film, which is kind of... Yes, sorry. There are cameos in this film, and we may mention them. Our production designer and costume designer, the lady wears two hats, folks. Her name is Olga Turka, and for what she's working with and the budget, kudos to this girl, because the production design and the costumes, they're actually pretty good for something of this ilk. I'm not putting down the horror genre. In fact, more about that later when we start reviewing this film. But she has been a costume designer and a production designer on films and shorts. Benji's Hour, again, I don't know what that is. The Zombie Wedding, she was costume designer for. So anybody else from the... Oh, we should say that the massive success of Terrifier 2. So as I had mentioned before, Leone did like Indiegogo Kickstarter campaigns to finance Terrifier 2, did his own special effects for that, basically edited, shot it, did it all over those years. That was a $250,000 film to make, and it made $15 million. Like, what? Wow, I can't. And so Leone actually farmed out the special effects. And so there is a completely different, there's actually two, but the mainstay makeup effects crew here is Tinsley Studio and Tinsley Makeup Effects, Christian Tinsley. Tinsley is, I mean, they that outfit is fantastic, as we saw in this film. But for the first time, he didn't have to worry about doing the makeup effects or stopping a scene and trying to conceive it, because they were all done basically as they were going. He was working with a crew of like 50 or 60 people. He said it was the most stressful time for him. And I only know that because I was digging through all those interviews to try to find more of Leone's background. So after Red does the cast, we'll get into our review and we'll see if that sort of shift into kind of a studio system works for this series or if it doesn't. So Red, on to you for the cast.
Yeah, so this will be quick. There's three actors returning. Obviously, we've mentioned David Howard Thornton with some of his other roles, but he's returning as Art the Clown, as well as Lauren Libera is returning as the final girl from the last film, Sienna, and then her brother being portrayed again by Elliot Fulham. He's playing Jonathan. You can kind of listen to our Terrifier 2 episode for their little breakdown. The only thing I really want to mention, I don't know if I mentioned it with the Terrifier 2 episode, but Lauren Libera has a lot of stunt work for like action films. So it's kind of nice to see that she gets to kind of transition into just being the heroine herself, which is fitting considering her character is obsessed with this angelic gladiator warrior that her dad had cooked up. For the only two I wanted to call out here because it's not most of the people are kind of new, but playing. So the way they bring her back is even though the brother is here, she has a cousin, named Gabby, that she is, but she's the new kind of like child in danger. So she hasn't really been into too much. She's still new. You would have seen her in Fear the Walking Dead, Raven's Home, Candy, which had Jessica Biel. But playing her mother in this, I was convinced her mother's character's name is Jessica. I was convinced this was Selma Blair's sister, because at certain angles, she kind of looked like Selma Blair. And then as I was sitting through the credits, there was an actress that came up that was credited as Alexa Blair. So I just assumed that's who it was until I went to go do this research. So Alexa Blair, whose full name is Alexa Blair Robertson on IMDb, but she just went by Alexa Blair in the movie, probably to irritate me and confuse me. She actually plays just this true crime podcaster who's obsessed with the Ark of the Clown murders and doesn't understand that she's being a leech. She was in apparently Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Long Haul, the Chuck series. But again, she's in something called The Sexpert. But she's new, so she's not that. The person that plays the mother is an actress named Margaret Ann Florence, who still kind of more of a workman type actor, but you would have seen her pop up more recently in Martin Scorsese's The Irishman, but she also popped up on a couple of episodes of Inside Amy Schumer, and she was also had a very small role in the, in my opinion, really lousy, even though I like the concept, comedy My Super Ex-Girlfriend from like the mid-2000s. But she'll pop up a lot of times in like the background on shows such as Blue Bloods, Nurse Jackie, 30 Rock, stuff like that. But I needed to call her out mainly just because I am still not convinced she's not somehow related to Selma Blair. Maybe it was just the way certain angles and the way things were lit, but she kind of looked like Selma Blair in this, and it was kind of distracting. And then
super distracting because I was like, oh my God, Selma Blair got plastic surgery or something. Like she looks so different. But you're right. They look very, very much alike.
Yeah. And then the only other, I will mention because we brought him up in the spoiler section, Terrifier 2, but Chris Jericho does return, and I will spoil this because I was disappointed because I'm like, you didn't Chris Jericho and you don't kill him. He gets killed in this movie. So they were just teasing that, I guess, at the end of Terrifier 2. Yes. So for those that don't know, Chris Jericho, I guess still is one of my favorite professional wrestlers. I kind of think he should maybe calm it down a little bit more, maybe focus on acting, but was one of my favorites growing up. Pro wrestler, is currently in AEW, just prolific wrestler. If you don't follow wrestling, you would have possibly seen him pop up in MacGruber, which I love, one of the funniest comedies, hysterical comedy.
MacGruber is it's my jam. I love that.
Yeah, I love MacGruber. So he pops up. He is the one that recruits, the first of many recruits that end up getting blown up, but he's the one that just gets to be with MacGruber because, I like the way you work out. Oh, I like the way you do too. I like the way you make jokes. I like you hear them. Like he's that guy. So if you've seen that, but he sometimes will dabble in doing stuff like this. I'm trying to think. I thought there was something else he popped up in recently, but I don't feel like looking him up because it's just going to be mainly wrestling. But playing Gabby's father, which I didn't even realize was him for a good chunk of the time, is Jason Patrick himself.
Oh,
most known
God,
has horror connections because he was Michael in The Lost Boys. You can say he was in Narc, The Losers, Speed 2, Cruise Control. He's apparently going to be in, I forget the name of it, but he's going to be in a movie with that I saw an ad for with Sylvester Stallone coming out. He was just recently in Strange Darling. I won't say how he was in that, but he was in Strange Darling, which you guys reviewed and I recommend as well. Yes. Just a very, very well-known actor. I guess when you look through some of the stuff he's been doing now, it might not be the craziest that he's in this, but it's still threw me for a loop. Because I mean, this is a guy that did like Sleepers, Speed 2, The Alamo, which I always actually really liked. I know Not a Bomb covered that. I think that one kind of got lost in the shuffle, but I remember quite liking The Alamo.
He also did a film with Rachel Ward called After Dark, My Sweet, which is fantastic. He's also naked in it. But Jason Patrick. So I think the rumor is he's difficult to work with, which if you hear, did Jan de Bont direct Speed 2, Cruise Control?
I believe he did. I thought he came back to that. I could look it up. Let me look it up quick.
But if you hear on-set stuff about him on Speed 2, he did his own stunts. He was very agreeable, but that's the rumor, is that maybe he's a little difficult to work with.
And yes,
But
de Bont did do Speed 2.
But the other theory I have is that he lost his hair, or his hairline was receding, and I think that, you know, Hollywood is, let's just call it out, they're very superficial, and he's a good-looking guy, but when his hairline started to recede, you could notice he wasn't getting the lead roles that he probably should have, because he's a great actor. And we should mention he is the son of Jason Miller, who played I forget the name, but he was the other priest, the non-Max von Sydow priest in The Exorcist, the original Exorcist. So Hollywood royalty, I was shocked to see him, because let's just say he's gained a lot of weight, and I did not, I was like, ooh, chunky dad is sexy. And then I was like, oh my God, it's Jason Patrick. And I kept nudging Randy, and I was like, it's Jason Patrick. It's Jason Patrick. He's like, no, it's not. It's not. It's some other fat Canadian dude. And it was him.
Suck on that, Randy.
But this is strange. Like, I don't know. Overweight, more mature Russell Crowe is still as super attractive to me as
I actually kind of
Gladiator
find him,
Russell Crowe.
strangely, I kind of find him sexier now than when he was Gladiator.
Oh my
I don't
God,
know. Maybe
totally.
it's just because he's like a cuddly bear now to me. Like a
Totally.
apparently, I don't like the word. I don't like it when people use like daddy in that in like a sexual connotation. But
Oh,
for some
right.
reason, Papa Bear, I'm fine with.
Yeah. And I know it's super offensive because I constantly say, like, man, fat Russell Crowe is my jam or whatever. But like, I just, and also because I'm watching 30 Rock again, Alec Baldwin in his current state is still super fucking sexy. Putting aside the whole controversy at this time. You know what? I'm just gonna talk about the cameos because they're not not significant characters, but Daniel Roebuck shows up in this, who was also in Stream. You will know him as a great character actor. He's known as one of the cops in The Fugitive. He has also gained some considerable weight, unfortunately. Still attractive.
I like him with the weight though. I think it actually, I think it adds to him more, really.
Me too. He was on the season opener of 911 when it jumped to ABC. And he's also known for playing Jay Leno on the film The Late Shift. Great character actor. Bradley Stryker is also in this. He plays the bartender. He started in those weird David D. Coteau, like shirtless, sexy softcore porn horror films. Like,
Oh
he's
yeah, I'm
in
familiar with
one
this.
of the Brotherhoods or whatever, but he is a fantastic actor. I wish he was in more. I love Bradley Stryker.
I will
Clint
say this.
Howard is in this.
I actually thought Bradley Stryker for a little bit was John Hawkes, and I'm like, I know he did horror, but I'm like, I'm surprised that they got John Hawkes for this.
No, he has that, like, okay, and this is not a dig at John Hawkes, but think of John Hawkes as filtered through like an Abercrombie model lens, and
Yeah,
you get
I can see
Bradley
that.
Stryker. Yeah, totally. But they have the nose, the facial features as like John Hawkes. I also think John Hawkes is gorgeous. But
I do too. And just before you go, the reason I also brought up John Hawkes was another movie I stumbled upon, and it's not set on Halloween, but I was watching something on YouTube. It's from the mid-90s. It's okay, but it's a slasher called Night of the Scarecrow. And it was from like 1995, and I kept referring to this character as Discount John Hawkes, only to discover no, it was actually John Hawkes.
Oh, wait, how did John Hawkes end up in something called Night of the Scarecrow?
I was the mid-90s, so I mean, at this
Oh,
point, I
okay,
don't think,
okay.
and he wasn't like he was getting there, but he still wasn't. That also had Stephen Root in it too, which I feel like by the mid-90s he was starting to make a name for himself. So I was surprised that Stephen Root was
Yeah.
in that. So maybe there was a connection with the filmmaker.
Sometimes you just have to pay the rent, right?
Yeah, that too.
We mentioned Tom Savini, who is Damian Leone's hero and inspiration. Clint Howard, Ron Howard's brother, is in this. I was shocked to see him.
I actually wasn't, just because he pops up in so many of these horror movies, and it kind of makes
Oh,
sense.
really? Well, you're
he's-
right. Wasn't he the dentist or no?
But he was Ice Cream Man, but he pops
That's
up
it.
a lot in low budget horror movies. Though I guess he's kind of stopped recently, but he would pop up a lot in these just because being easy paydays. But to
Yeah.
a degree, I was still surprised because I wasn't expecting too many cameos. But like once they started coming in, I'm like, okay, it makes sense they got Clint Howard.
Absolutely. And then I was just going to mention the very good looking father is Bryce Johnson, very noted Canadian actor. He's been in a ton of Shizats. His brother is Eric Johnson, who played Flash Gordon on TV, the sci-fi series. So they do have similar looks. I don't know. I guess I would say Eric Johnson's a little hotter, but whatever, it's fine. At least I think they're related. They certainly do look alike. But I'm a fan of his work. I've seen a lot of stuff that he's been in. He's been in like Willow Creek. We mentioned that other stuff. Yeah, I think that is his brother. Anyway, all right, here we go. Anybody else to mention in the cast?
No, I think we hit the cast and the cameos.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not, most of the cast is newbies, or newbies, I should say, and so they're still kind of cutting their teeth, and then you got the cameos to kind of bring some of the world. So the cameos weren't as egregious here as they were in Street, is what I will say.
Oh, okay, got it. All right, here we go. Spoiler-free review of Terrifier 3. I'm going to start with the OG, Red.
Okay.
What did you think about Terrifier?
So, I'm the one that did like Terrifier 2. I had my reservations, but I did enjoy it as... I can't remember. I was going to re-listen to our episode, but one, I don't like the sound of my own voice.
Yeah.
So I don't like listening to myself, but two, I just didn't get around to it. So I can't remember if I brought this comparison up. I assume I would have because it's me. But the way that I approached Terrifier 2, and I guess you could say the first and now the third, was kind of like deathmatch pro wrestling. So what that is in the world of pro wrestling is this very violent, very bloody type of wrestling where they might use some really, barbed wire, fire, some like crazy weapons, and it can get very gruesome and sick. And in the world of pro wrestling, if you don't like that, a lot of times it gets dismissed as, well, it's not wrestling, when realistically it's just another version of wrestling, and there is arguably an art form to it. And it's a form that it's not always up my alley, but every now and then, especially if I'm in with the right group of people, I can kind of get into deathmatch wrestling. And I think that's how I'm approaching the Terrifier. Because I, like many horror fans, love slasher movies and do love like the creative kills that you see in them. But the Terrifier films take it to another level. They go from just, I had the most common complaints or criticism, I should say, lodged against them is it's gore for gore's sake. I know the Saw franchise, we discussed this last time. I know we did, got that a lot, but I feel like that one still tried to be grounded in its almost soap opera level of drama. Even though, yes, that's where, a lot of the traps were kind of ingenious. But this one, there's no bones about it. They're clearly like, we're being ultra violent. We're the death match of the slasher genre. And that is both, I think, a positive and negative for me. A positive because I will say I am fascinated going into this third one. How are they going to top some of the stuff that they did in the last two? The first one had the really gruesome sawing the woman from like the bottom up. So going from her vagina up, that was just really prolonged and disgusting, which is why I was surprised that not only did you like that movie, but while Terrifier 2 definitely arguably took it further when you were still like on Terrifier 2, this one took it too far. I'm like, it's not like the first didn't have some creepy, gruesome shit, but the second one had the one where it was just this prolonged brutalization of this teenager and them pouring bleach into her wounds.
And the salt.
And the salt and the bleach. This one definitely still has those moments, and we'll talk more about them in the spoiler section. I will say, and actually, strangely enough, I'll say I might have liked this one more than the second, but there was a part of me that was like, now that we're on to the third one, there's a bit of feeling numb to some of the carnage. Because the gore, it lingers so much that for a lot of this, it's almost like, oh, is that all you got? And they throw some stuff at me. There's one near the end that made me queasy. I didn't get sick, but even I got queasy during. Okay. But there is that layer of where's 4 going to go? Because now it's like, am I just becoming numb? Because some of the stuff, or even then, like there's the more basic killings where he's just, hacking them away or crucifying them basically with a sledgehammer. The lingering kind of makes me realize, not that I'm condoning the MPAA cutting shit, but sometimes with slashers, the immediacy of the moment and not lingering can kind of help just in not grossing you out too much. Or I think in this case too, like the opening where this is not a spoiler, I think, but where he kills a family on Christmas Eve or around Christmas. One of the deaths you just hear, you see the aftermath, Because I guess a slight spoiler, he does kill children in this movie, but I've seen some people, including our good friend EF Contentment, say he kind of cops out. Even I kind of thought it, even though I'm not complaining that he didn't show it. But most of the child deaths are off screen, and then you see the aftermath. So I don't know if that was him being conscientious or if that was Cineverse or whoever finally going, okay, let's not actually show the child death.
It's not them being conscientious, I'll tell you. It's
Which is that's why I thought it was kind of weird. But I mean, you always hear stories, which I think it's just him being a showman. I don't think they really cared so much about how much he was going to show, because it's just like 2 is unrated.
well, I think you know how I feel about kids.
It's child death. That's why I was like, you might like this one. But I will say, hearing it over seeing it was more disturbing than actually seeing it, because you had to imagine it. But I will say, as a deathmatch pro wrestling event of a horror movie, I still did enjoy this. And I think the 2 things I think make this better than the first, or not the first, at least the second, maybe the first, jury's still on that, is 1, it is shorter. It is still too long. It's a little over 2 hours. It's just at the 2 hour mark. I think it could still go down to 90, 100 tops, but it being shorter, it doesn't meander as much. And while it still definitely has kills in this, that the characters are just there just to be killed. I mean, there's guys that go into the abandoned house that, Art takes home ownership in, and he basically kills them all. So you do still get those. There's a better flow here. The biggest gripe I had with the second one, a lot of people did, is it's just there were certain things that could have been on the chopping block, pardon the pun, but it wasn't, just because you wanted to be able to probably put this in here. And I don't know if maybe it's just because somebody got into his ear, he took those criticism well, or maybe he just knows, oh, I'm going to probably make a 4th one, so I don't have to shove as much as I need to in this one. But this does flow better. And 2, while this does still fall into the same trap that I think Kids vs. Aliens did, where it's drama or the plot beats are very familiar and maybe too pat, the fact that there's more of an attempt here to handle the PTSD that Sienna's dealing with, and the fact that her brother, she gets this very traumatic PTSD, and her brother has his own form of PTSD. But my joke was, Art just made him a fucking nerd, because now he's not into death metal or wearing anything. He's just a generic nerd at a college. Yeah. But there's at least an attempt here to be a more straightforward slasher, where there is characterizations. They're trying to make you care about the characters. They're really trying to make Sienna and Gabby have this nice connection. And I think it's decent enough. I think a lot of what makes me like Sienna is Lauren, her performance. I think she is really good, almost, I hate to say, better than the movie deserves, but like, she really stands out here. And I think that helps. But there's a lot of times too where it's, one, you can tell it's just a means to an end. And I don't think Leone still cares all that much. It's more just so he can, I don't care about the world building. I know I appreciate that he's trying to do this world building with Art as a demon and how they go with that. I just think it's very flimsy. A lot of the like demonic shit we get into and some of the religious allegories, there's way too on the nose. But I did enjoy this. And I think the one other thing that kind of struck me more is, one, I think the more absurd these sequels get, I think that's also kind of making the violence easier to handle, because it's like a really, really bloody, like cartoon then, as opposed to being realistic for the most part. And it's strange because I have a friend that did not like the first Terrifier. So I was like, well, he's not going to like the sequels, but he's kind of come around and likes the sequels. And his thing was, the more absurd they get, it's easier for me to handle it. So I guess that kind of works for people. But
I think that goes to your point of being numb.
Numb to it.
So the craziness.
But the one thing, and I kind of hope we get more of this in the 4th one, is there are actual genuine amusing moments with Art in this that had me laughing, and not him being like a killer, just him being a clown. Early on in that first slashing in the opening, after he kills the family, leaves just a bloody trail. He eats the cookies that were left out for Santa, or I'm sorry, Santa's elves in this situation. But then you see him, he washes the plate, dries it off, and puts it back. And I laughed so hard at that, because I'm like, I love the idea that this demonic clown will eviscerate people and leave their bloody carcasses, but he's not going to like crumbs and let the rats come up that way. That made me, so little moments like that, or like when he meets Daniel Roebuck, who plays a Santa Claus at a bar, his genuine enthusiasm over meeting Santa had me laughing. And then his interaction with the bartender, because he has this like bag of, tricks. So first you're like, oh, what's he going to pull out? And he pulls out just, the little honker, the little bell. But then when he's like, do you have ID? And he just excitedly pulls out the ID. And it's like, you have Daniel Roebuck being like, come on, just give him a drink. those moments, I'm like, I do want to just see David Howard Thornton in a comedy. Like, I know that, you know, he loves horror, and I'm fine with him just if he stays in the horror realm. I know he wants to actually play the Joker, but I wouldn't mind seeing him play a clown that's just being a goofy clown and there's no like horror around it. Because his body language, like, there are just so many little moments there, or like he has the victim from the first one who came back in the second, who's still freaks me out. The mutilation of her face is really creepy, but she's brought back because she's
Vicky.
possessed. Vicky. And in the beginning, when they're going back to their lair and she's doing what he normally does, and it's being over exuberant and annoying and honking of the horn, his like demeanor, just like rolling his eyes in that, had me cackling. And I'm like, I kind of want a little, I know this was in there in the second one, but I'm like, maybe it's just that growing numb, but like those moments stuck out to me. And I'm like, a little bit more of that kind of like black humor goes a long way. And I think making this work. Again, there's still moments of this. If you're coming for your ultra violence, they try to top themselves. And there's one that worked for me. There's another one that I think people might highlight that's in a shower that kind of just kept going. And then it got very gruesome. But even then, that kind of ends, and maybe we'll get to it more with the spoilers, with black humor that kind of offsets some of the carnage. So I still enjoyed this. I'm not in love with this franchise, but I do have this morbid curiosity with it. And I am happy to see indie horror doing well. I will say the fan base can be annoying as hell, as with any fan base, because there are a lot of people, you're not alone in this, that are big horror fans that don't care for these movies. And that's fair and that's fine. And I've seen some, especially on like the TikTok, where they're just like, yeah, that's just not for me. But then the fan base is like, well, yeah, but it's just indie horror and he did all of this. And I'm like, no, I respect that. I'm glad that's successful. I don't care for it. We need to allow that to happen, folks. People cannot like Terrifier. I'm glad that it's starting to, you know, hit the pop culture. It's at Spirit Halloween. It's in Call of Duty. I was at a festival the other week where somebody was walking around in an Art the Clown costume. So he's clearly becoming an icon. But people are allowed to not like it, just like people are allowed not to like the Saw films. And maybe we can have a discussion, like I know you and I would say, we don't consider the Saw movies to be torture porn because there is a through line there. At least for these two sequels, yes, there is a through line. I think the argument is the through line, the slasher elements, is it good enough to feel like it's not just gore for gore's sake? That's always going to be up for debate. But people can like it, but people cannot. I'm kind of maybe a little bit, not so much the middle, maybe a little bit above that. I do enjoy these, but they're not my favorite. I'm not as over the top as most people are, but they are interesting crowd experiences, I will say.
Yeah, definitely. Except for the teens who were on their phones halfway through, because I think they got bored.
I lucked out that I didn't have teens on their phones. I did have people walk out though. And I'm not, and it's weird because I feel like when maybe they walked out because they just got bored, because maybe they were expecting more gore for gore's sake and not getting, but I feel like 2 at least still tries to be a slasher movie as well. It's just, but it is strange because I can't imagine going into Terrifier 3 not knowing what to expect. Like there's no way you're going into Terrifier 3 not having seen at least the second one. But maybe there are.
At least. But you know, there was an allegation, I can't remember where I read it, but there was an allegation that Leone and the studio set up a screening of this film, but had billed it as a holiday film. And when people showed up, and then it was Terrifier 3, and then the opening, people walked out. But then, so the allegation is that was the setup for it. And then they could go out and say, we had all these mass walkouts. Well, if you bill it as a holiday film and you get fucking Terrifier 3, people gonna walk out.
And if that is true, I'm hoping that one's a lie, because that's shady.
I hope it's a lie, because that's
but I also feel,
right
because
there.
I know, and I'm not going to say people couldn't have gotten sick. I'm like I said, I did get queasy at one point during this. Though I wouldn't have gotten sick. I can tell when I get queasy, and it's just like, oh, this is turning me off. But I do feel like you could easily just say, oh yeah, people left, like, because that's a whole horror trope. Here's the vomit bag, or here's the, So I hope that's just a story, because even with like the Regal mystery movies, they started announcing when they were horror, because my friend would be like, oh yeah, so-and-so, people walked out like with a few minutes in. I'm like, well, if you don't like horror movies and you realize it's a horror movie, I don't blame people for leaving. Like,
right.
That is
it's like a trigger warning in some way.
and in this case too, it's like, I could at least see, because I think it was a Regal mystery movie. It's not a good movie, so I could see people walking out because of that. But It's a Wonderful Night is a much more, I'd argue, accessible holiday horror movie where even if you don't like that, like I wouldn't want, my mom's not into horror movies, but she could probably tolerate that. I would never let her watch a Terrifier movie because I know she wouldn't like those. So again, that's shady. Don't be like, oh, it's a holiday. Like, come on, don't be an edgelord. Like, be an adult. Like that's just dumb.
Stupid.
And honestly, not that the opening kills aren't gruesome, and I could see it's still shocking people, but to me, that's, I wouldn't say tame, but it's not. There's more kills later on that I consider more extreme than the opening, because I know they kept saying, because that was the other thing. I think he was saying they wanted him to tone down the opening. I'm thinking that was a lie, because there's other things in this movie I could have seen them asking you to tone down before the opening.
Well, the thing I read was Leone had said that there was a lot of studio interest in this, that they wanted to basically bankroll the production and maybe even the franchise. And he opted not to because he was like, there's no way a studio is going to green light the opening scene. But then I was like, well, that kind of sounds like you want ownership of your own thing, and you're being a little bit of a showman in saying,
which I'm fine with.
Oh
like,
yeah, I
that.
turned down the studios because I knew it would never get past whatever. And it's like,
I will say this though, I do agree. There's no way if he would have been able to release this as an R rating, he would have had to tone it down. So I don't think he's wrong on that front.
no, of course. And as I had said in our substance review, Universal backed out of releasing it because they were like, no, we're not putting this on our brand. So I get it. I completely get it.
I definitely get it. And I kind of like, I mean, this is going to open number one with almost, I think it's right now, the high end is 18 million, which is insane for an unrated movie. And I think it also goes to show that, like, if there's still trepidation on an NC-17, then I think that means they're not checked. Like, if it's unrated, I would assume if it's unrated, it should act like an NC-17, where if you're not 17, you can't go in. But I guess that's not the case as long as you have a guardian.
Nobody does that. Nobody does that
anyway. But that would be the issue with NC-17, and to me, that's hypocrisy, because here's something that would easily be NC-17 if it actually got a rating. And I'm fine that it's getting unrated. It's unheard of nowadays. I've seen box office.
I think unrated just means it hasn't been submitted.
Yeah, it hasn't been submitted, but it's just the idea that, like, you don't want to get the NC-17 because it kills you at the box office, but now it's being shown that you can be unrated and still make money, which shows that if it's unrated, there's not that restriction that NC-17 apparently has.
I know. And yet, Showgirls, an NC-17 rated film, is one of the most amazing films in history. So, okay, on to my spoiler-free review.
Yeah, it's a watch for me. I don't know if I actually said that.
Oh, it's a watch. Okay.
If you can't get that, it is a watch for me.
Thank you. So on to my spoiler-free review for Terrifier 3. As if you have gone back and listened to the Terrifier 2 review, I did not take kindly to that in some ways. Although I did like the first film. And you mentioned the horror fan base. And so I'm going to be very careful about this, because I think you're right. We need to allow horror fans to be able to say, I'm not a Babadook fan. I like slashers more. I did not like Terrifier. I think we have to allow that because, people hype up horror fans. To me, and I'm going to say this again with I love horror fans, and I want to be very careful about saying this, because I don't think that the horror fans are as toxic or as crazy as, say, Star Wars or Marvel fanboys. Okay, like, in other words, if a group of strangers showed up at my house and they said, "Hey, we're horror fans. We need a place to stay or whatever for the night," I'd probably let them in, right? But if they came in and they were like, "Hey, we're Marvel fans, Star Wars fans," I'd be like, "Go find the hotel down the road." Okay, that's how much I really, if somebody tells me they're a Marvel fanboy, I'm walking the other way, right? And so the thing about the horror fans, and this may be a stereotype, but they tend to hype a film before it's even come out, right? This is going to be amazing. It's the return of horror or whatever. And even if they see the film and they hate the film, they don't then text that the film sucked or whatever. They sort of are just like, well, it wasn't for me. And then they move on to the next thing. But there is a lot of hype over this, that this is the second coming of horror, that this, Art the Clown is now, in the pantheon of horror icons. I don't know if that's true. And I preface all of this because I want to be respectful to horror fans because again, they are just they're my people. They're they're your people.
Mhm.
Like we are horror fans. Like that's why we watch the low budget stuff and we can be critical but say, "Hey, this part was good or the kills were good or what have you." Um I did not like this at all. I just thought it was garbage, and I was surprised. I was very surprised to hear that well, when I was watching the credits, that he had farmed out the effects to somebody completely different. And it's not to say that the effects feel different from the second film. They're spot on. Very, if Damien Leone did the the special effects here, I would say this is very Leone-like, okay? But what I didn't like about this, and this is strange because now I'm wondering if I saw a completely different movie, if I was in a different mood, was I thought the pacing was awful. I thought that it meandered like crazy. Why did we need to see him going into the department store with the whatever? I know it's a plot point to get him somewhere else, but there's just one too many sequences of people dying and the core story, the core drama is the Lauren Rivera character, Sienna, and what she's going through and her fears that he's coming back to like sort of like kill her and kill her brother Elliot. No, it's not Elliot. Elliot's the actor.
Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Who does? I will say Jonathan kind of. Maybe they're going to do more with him in 4. We'll get to that with the spoilers. But I felt they did him dirty. I joked about him being a nerd, but I thought he just kind of got pushed aside because of Gabby.
Well, I hate to say this, and as somebody who has a very like high-pitched like Asian voice that can be kind of annoying, his voice, I'm like, isn't he after puberty? But it's like annoying. His voice is like, it was weird. It was like, anyway. But I just thought that it meandered, and you are correct. Part of what made Terrifier and Terrifier 2 good in any respect was the fact that they really honed in on Art being this mocking clown, which is, I mean, it's actually brilliant, right? A clown as a serial killer is perfect because he doesn't talk, but he also can joke and do all these like, manic behaviors and laughs and things like that. I think that stuff worked much better in Terrifier 2 than it did here. There is a lag, as you said, until the Art character starts bringing some of that back in there. And I was surprised that it took so long to get to that behavior because that's why I would come to a Terrifier movie is to see Art's hijinks and Art's joking and mocking manner. And I think they waited too long to bring that in. I agree that bar scene is really what I wanted to see more of. And I think that cold open spares us from that. And it's like, no, that's not what we want, right? We want Art to be that way. There are some things that work in this film. As you said, I do think that Lauren Rivera is fantastic in this. I didn't think her acting was great in the second film. Did she take a crash course in acting? I don't know. She's fantastic in this. I really loved her. And the rest of the people I could do without. The actress that plays Gabby, I can tell you that when I was watching Fear the Walking Dead, I was like, ooh, she took emotional acting 101. And I was like, oh man, I'm not ready to see her fuck this shit up. She's actually better than I remember her from the other stuff. But
it's always hard with child actors too, because one, they're still learning, but two, I mean, all acting, you can argue, still is collaborative, and the directors and all them have a play in it, but more so with kids because they need the direction more than an adult would. So a lot of times, whenever I see a bad child performance, I'm like, well, I'm blaming the director more on this because why are you letting them hang out to dry here? They need you more than anybody else does. And yeah, she definitely had those moments. I didn't see Fear the Walking Dead in this, but for the most part, I think, again, maybe it's just because she was mainly paired with Sienna, who I liked her well enough in the second one, but she is definitely improved here. I do want to go back quick. I should state that while I do like the pacing more in this than the second. It does still have issues. I think it just doesn't feel to me like it meanders as much because it's a shorter movie. The one issue, and I think this is why it meanders to you, and I should have touched on this more and I didn't. The problem is his structure, because he'll do the bit where, okay, you have those the two dudes that are going to demolish the Art the Clown lair. They're going in there, but it'll go back and forth between that and like Sienna, but it doesn't feel organically. Like there's a way to edit that. That I think is the issue where it's that doesn't always flow well, or it feels like crazy conspiracy theory. There's a part of me that wonders if Leone took umbrage with the fact that people called his second movie too long, because there are aspects here, especially with the brother and even areas where I feel like there was more that was going to happen at his college than that did, that I almost feel like we're going to find out, like he either cut stuff out or cut it from the script. And he's like, well, this is why I needed to be longer. I'm like, no, you just need to do better with the scripting. Because there are moments here where every movie has editing and there's stuff. He's like, oh, I didn't, I wouldn't have known they had to cut this out because they know how to make it flow. He still has an issue, I think, with some of the flow. I think for me, it's just more coming from after the second, where that was such a big issue, since this one's at least a half hour or so shorter. It didn't feel as bad for me. But yeah, I mean, it's still a present issue. Definitely,
it's a huge issue. I mean, listen, the fact that he didn't have. So this is what concerns me. Listen, Leone, he is definitely a showman. Maybe it's a little, as Samurai likes to say on GGTMC, maybe it's a little of him being high on his own farts. Okay. But because he didn't have to do, and this is what surprised me the most about it, was because he didn't have to then stop directing and then do the special effects, he didn't learn anything about pacing and editing and cutting things out. Like, he gives this interview where he says things like, oh, there were all these gems that I wanted to keep in that were great for the story, and I felt bad even just cutting it out now and making it 2 hours. No, the dialogue is inane. This could have been a really efficient 100-minute horror film. And there is actual power in this story. And I think you are correct. The cutting back and forth between, because he sets up a sort of like a dual kind of thing where it's Vicky and Art versus Jonathan and Sienna. Right? But you are correct. He blanched a little bit on more interaction with Jonathan at the college, and more people being killed at the college to draw the two of them together and maybe fight as a team. And then he sort of screws us with that as well, which we'll talk about in the spoiler section. And so it's weird. He shot himself in the foot by not. I think this is a problem with some indie filmmakers. And I'll go back to my husband, Adam Wingard, my future husband, Adam Wingard. He has said, I'm glad that I learned going from a $250,000 budget film to $1 million film to a $5 million to a big budget, because that taught me about editing and pacing and narrative. I don't think Leone has that just yet, and that's why this is so meandering. I came out of this and I was like, you know what? I think 2 is much better than this. And I actually rewatched both of them. I rewatched Terrifier and Terrifier 2 because I knew he was probably going to bake in some of those supernatural elements. But even then, he doesn't explain the supernatural elements as well. Like, I still don't understand Vicky's role.
Without going into spoilers, it's the one thing that did irk me about this is it's clear they know there's going to be a fourth one, and they're holding back a lot because I feel like the fourth is going to go. I guess I just didn't care as much because I'm fine if he wants to delve into the supernatural, do you? I just don't really care. It's just that for me feels more like a means to an end. And maybe I would just focus more on just the PTSD aspect. That's also why I have to do it more with spoilers, but everything with the college, I feel like we're going to get some scenes, because the one thing I didn't, even though, well, there's a part of me that liked it because then we still got some scenes on Halloween. So it's still kind of a Halloween movie, but we obviously flash back to Chris Jericho, but after the cold open, we get flashbacks to the end of 2 and seeing some scenes that we wouldn't have seen in 2 that are now in this. I feel we're going to get that with 4, where there's going to see some stuff from the college or whatever that we didn't see in 3 that's going to be in 4. And I think that's going to hurt the pacing too, because he does seem to like doing that, of like having random flashbacks that we didn't really know. And I think 90 to 100 minutes is usually best for a slasher anyway, and especially with these. And when he's talking about gems, I'm just guessing here. I feel like those gems might have been kills, not like actual plot, because like I said, I mean, Sienna's doing, more Lavera's doing the heavy lifting here, but I feel like a lot of the drama and all that is pretty familiar. And like you said, a lot of the dialogue is pretty inane. And the only time the dialogue doesn't feel that way is when either you have her, or I think you bring in your Daniel Roebucks and your Strikers in them, because they're more capable of making the dialogue seem more fun or none, you know.
Oh, I should also mention this. One of the demolition guys, I swear it is John Abrahams, who was in Scary Movie. You know, the skinny, good-looking, pale, dark-haired guy? But on IMDb, he is listed separately as John Abrahams 4 with only the Terrifier 3 credit. But I think it's that actor. He just like Jason Patrick, unfortunately gained a lot of weight, but he's still sexy in his overweight status.
I mean, is it possible he's just a relative?
Also named John Abrahams? I don't know.
But he said he was the 4th, right? Didn't he?
Well, no, in IMDb, he's listed as the 4th John Abrahams.
Oh, I got you. I thought you were saying he was John Abrahams the 4th. So
No.
I got you.
I think it's an IMDb mistake credit, but
okay, that would make sense. Okay, I got what you're saying. I'm at IMDb now, and I see what you're saying. I thought his full name was John Abrahams the 4th, and that's why I was like, well, maybe it's.
No. But I think it's the same guy. I always thought that guy was super sexy, but he's even sexier now. Overweight. Actually, I'm going to say one last thing, and then we'll get into the spoilers, because I think we want to start talking about that. Terrifier 1 ends with a thank you from Damien Leone to 3 filmmakers: Wes Craven, John Carpenter, and Tobe Hooper. It wasn't until I rewatched Terrifier 1 and 2 that I realized he's just riffing on scenes from their best films. And I don't know why it wasn't obvious to me when I saw that. It was more obvious to me when I watched this. And I was just like, he's not even, I mean, he's just restaging things, you know? I mean, so I say that, and I would just say, if you are a new horror genre fan who loves this and wants to know what I'm talking about, check out Black Christmas, check out Silent Night, Deadly Night, check out Tales from the Crypt, check out Friday the 13th, the final chapter. I mean, he literally stole the shower opening shot of that sex scene from the final chapter. It's literally the same.
Was the final chapter or the 3rd one that he stole it from?
The 4th. It's the 4th one. The one where Matthew Starr and the girl are having sex in the shower in that frosted. It's the exact same shot.
Okay, because I thought that was the 3rd one, but maybe it was the 4th. They kind of blend together.
There's a shower in each of them, but the frosted glass is the
4th.
One.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I just was like, he's not even trying.
You know, I think to bring something up for that though, because you think about Carpenter, it's a weird thing. Maybe it just shows with how filmmakers still get their own stamp, because somebody like a Carpenter, you can see his inspirations once you see the films that he grew up with, obviously the thing from Another Planet.
Of course.
But where is it that they find their voice? And maybe Leone's not there yet, that because some of it could just be, well, we didn't grow up with those, but I do think some of it comes down to how do you frame it where it's paying homage but still doing your own thing? How do you Quentin Tarantino it as opposed to, I guess, Damien Leone it?
Yeah.
Because that is, especially when it comes to horror filmmakers and fans, I mean, maybe it's just because his production values are better than most, but like that's a big issue with a lot of indie horror movies since time immemorial, but especially since the 80s onward, is just aping what you've seen before as opposed to putting your own stamp on it.
So the problem is I saw a lot of aping, even down to, and In the Mouth of Madness, which he rips off frequently in this film. Even to the point where George Stuber, love you, guy. You're great. I want to see you in other films, maybe even a drama film as a cinematographer. But Stuber is literally copying Dean Cundey. It's all just Dean Cundey. And I don't know, it irritated the fuck out of me. But I one other mention, and I swear we'll get to spoilers. I thought this was shot on film. They tinkered with the post-production. This was captured by the Alexa 35, which goes back to the fact that I just think the Alexa is king. Fuck Red. Sorry, I know that there's people who love, not you, Red. I know there are people who love Red digital camera, the Red Dragon, the Red Ninja, all those, the Scarlet, all of that. And it is a capable 8K digital camera, but Alexa is tops. So much so that literally I was fooled. I thought this was shot on film and it wasn't. It's digital capture. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? So anyway, it's a skip for me.
I'm not surprised by it. I would have been
yeah.
surprised if this was a watch, even though I will say I expected you to like this a little bit more than the first, or not the first, the second. But
actually, I appreciate the second. I've come around. I appreciate the second more. And what's weird is the second time that I watched it, and then the third time that I listened to the commentary, it didn't drag as much as it felt when I was watching it in the theaters. But I think it's much, for whatever reasons, it works, and this one does not.
So what I'm hearing is once we do Terrifier 4 in a few years, you're going to be like, I have actually come around on Terrifier 3 as well.
Yes.
I'm noticing a trend with you, sir.
Well, guess what? I have not rewatched Clerks 3, but hold for that because I may come back and text you and be like, I love it. So, all right, if you have not seen Terrifier 3, we are going to spoil it faster than you can put your clown makeup on. In 3, 2, 1. All right. So let's talk about some of the supernatural element stuff that they're doing. So now so when I go back to Leone smelling his own farts, in the commentary, he was like, David Lynch doesn't explain what he's doing to people, so why should I or whatever? And it was like, oh, come on.
Yeah, Lynch
anyway.
I get where he's coming from, but you always have to be careful with saying that stuff too, just because then it does come off as just like, well, you're not Lynch, you know?
Right.
And Lynch his goal is much different. He is making almost like these surreal mysteries, if you will. That's not what those movies are. So that's not even comparable. I mean, I can see where he's coming from because there are times, especially when it comes to horror, I don't need things explained to me. I just think when it comes to the supernatural stuff, there needs to be ground rules, and I just don't feel really
and I don't think they've established it really well. What I gather is obviously, I guess when demons cross over, right? The demons have to inhabit a host. There is a harbinger who sort of calls the demon back to this realm, and then for whatever reasons, when that is sort of penetrated, when they go from the demon realm into this world, an avatar for good is created. And so Sienna is the avatar for good, like the Excalibur, the King Arthur legend. And then Vicky is the demon who wants to come back to inhabit a host. And then Art is the harbinger. I don't know. Is that right? I have no idea. And then apparently they need to slay her in order to stay in this realm. I don't know.
It's funny that he brought up David Lynch doesn't have to explain, because maybe people were coming out of that first Terrifier asking for more explanation, but I never felt like people were. And the only time I felt like people were saying, hey, we want more now, like explanation, was when he already started delving into the underworld or the supernatural in 2. Maybe it was a little bit there in the first, but I don't remember like anyone really ever coming out. So I'm like, if there's any complaints, I'm like, you're at fault for bringing in the supernatural shit to begin with. Yeah. Because I'm like, hey, look, if you want to go down that route, at least now it doesn't ground it, but it gets it away from just being gore for gore's sake. Fine. I don't care. If you're going to introduce it, I want ground rules, and I don't feel that they really are. And I had the same issue with The Jester, which was the film that's on Shudder. That's kind of similar. There's this guy in a jester outfit is mocking people, but clearly he has supernatural powers. But when they try to explain a lot of this shit near the end and make us, not so much a social, but I guess an emotional allegory, I think it kind of fell flat up until then. I thought it was decent. And I would still say
look, sometimes you don't need the explanation, but if you're going to go there,
once you start showing it, which they kind of did with The Jester, and they especially are doing with these Terrifier movies, once you go more heavier with it, then you have to introduce ground rules. So if you want to do your Lynchian, and that's still an unfair comparison because Lynchian is so different with how he does it, but if you want to go that route of not explaining too much, then you need to be you got to keep a lot to your chest, and you need to be very blunt and reserved with it. It is the word I'm looking for. You can't introduce many supernatural elements then. Once you start opening the portal to hell and you see all these demons and all this shit, now you have to explain it. You have forced your hand to explain something, and they haven't so far done that much. And like, I don't really care where it goes, but I'm sure they're going to go crazy with it in the fourth. And I know there's been jokes about like, oh, maybe they'll go to space. I feel like 4 is going to spend a lot of time in hell, and I don't know if I'm going to like that as much.
Well, it was a trap that Hellbound Hellraiser 2 fell into, because it was like, that's the fucking underworld.
Yeah.
But
so I actually do like Hellbound. It doesn't hold up as well on rewatches, but I still do actually enjoy Hellbound Hellraiser 2. Because
I'm still trying to figure out that fucking movie. Okay,
I don't quite get it. And I kind of just take it as a fever dream. I will say the last rewatch, it doesn't hold up as well, but I do love the set design of that film so much that I'm fine with that being hell.
It's gorgeous. But so with this, all right, I'm going to go back and I'm actually going to praise Terrifier 2. The clown cafe sequence in Terrifier 2, I was dumbfounded by it when I first saw it, but it's very clever in setting up what happens in the rest of the film. It's also very clever in sort of setting up the supernatural elements of it. But what I thought they were going to go with was, in that sort of dream sequence that she's having, kids are dying. Like, he takes the Tommy gun out and he kills all these kids, and then he appears to be eating something. I thought the demons needed to eat children's hearts in order to survive, or in order to stay on this plane while they were seeking out the Slayer. I'm calling her the Slayer now. And I thought that that's where it was going to go in 3, but they didn't. But they did kill kids. So I was like, that would have been an ideal thing, I think, to sort of go for. But
my takeaway from the 2 was just, and as anything with demons, is it's just they get off on killing, and especially why he's a clown, on torturing people. So I never, and I'm not saying that you're sniffing your own farts and overthinking. I think now that you've listened to a lot of interviews with Leone and where they're going to go, it definitely seems like they might, they're trying to hint at something, that there's more to it. I mean, obviously, because at the end, she needs her, you're a very strong one. That's why I can't possess you. I guess for me, I'm just like, I'm glad you're trying to maybe try something, but I just think it all falls flat, because I think it doesn't need to be anything more than it's just the demon that likes to terrorize, because that's, what demons do. And I think just trying to over explain, and this is a criticism that I'm lodging at Leone, not you, is just, it's going too far in the opposite direction. It's like, I'm glad that you're not trying to be just gore for gore's sake, but now you're overthinking it. You don't need to go this crazy with all this stuff. You just need to have a better through line. And this one is getting there. It still has its issues, but it's at least trying to be a more proper slasher, which I think 2 was still trying to do. It just, this one to a lesser degree for me, but both have meandering issues, or it's because he wants his scenes, the setup in a lot of his kills to linger a lot. I think that's where it's coming to, because most slasher movies also had random characters that popped up and got killed, but they flowed better because they either our main characters interacted with them, or if you had this scene where it cuts to, them going to the house and demolishing it, you rarely cut back and forth. You just did that scene. It was over in a few minutes. His problem with that is he scenes linger way too long.
Yeah. And I guess, he definitely doesn't stick the landing with the supernatural elements. Like, first of all, at the end of Terrifier 2, we don't see what she births. We simply just saw like intestines, but it turns out it was like Art's head that was like regrowing, feeding off of the nurse, which was kind of Cronenbergian and disgusting. I'll give it that. But like, why did she try to commit suicide and then came back and had to eat the black demolition man? Like, I just was so confused about shit. It was done.
Yeah. My understanding of it, I guess near the end, was that she eventually succumbed to the demonic possession because she wasn't strong enough. But again, it's not explained well enough. And it just, it just feels like it's there to be there. Like, we just wanted to bring this character back and have this creepy shit.
You know what it felt like? It felt like that United Colors of a religious Benetton scene from Exorcist Believer. It was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
like, what's happening? let's talk about the brother. So just
He's
so
a
everybody
fucking
knows,
nerd.
that's literally how he sounded.
Yeah,
I leaned over to Randy and I was like, it's fucking Eddie Deason.
Yeah, I felt
the
like
new generation.
like I definitely felt like they did him dirty, but I also understand why because it's probably for the best that he's not in this a whole lot. But then again, they also didn't have to make him into a whiny nerd the whole like it's just
Yeah. Well, we should say there's a production reason why the story is set 5 years later. And primarily that's because the actor that played Jonathan actually grew like 7 inches if you pay attention in Terrifier 2. And so they had to kind of wait. And that's why I was surprised because I was like, wait a minute, he's in college? What the fuck just happened or whatever? But yeah, they did him dirty. He's allegedly dead. Like I knew that when they revealed that head that it was supposed to be Gabby, I was like, no, it's going to be the
it's not
brother or
Gabby.
whatever.
Yeah, and honestly, even then, I don't even think it's the brother. My immediate thought, especially after like, well, they're going to say it's not Gabby, then is because they love doing the flashbacks, and we didn't see what also happened to the dad. The dad might have died, but it's either the dad's head, and we're going to see that kill in the fourth one.
Oh no,
or
the dad's head was on the Christmas tree.
Oh, that's
so
right.
this,
That is right.
So this is a weird thing. Scott caught that in a continuity error. He was like, oh, the dad's head's on the Christmas tree. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I
And it was
honestly,
the next shot.
I honestly thought it might have been the fucking teen that the roommate that they killed. But honestly, it's probably just.
I think it's one of the demolition men.
It's one of the demolition men, or it's going to be some victim we didn't see that just from the college, and then the brother's going to have more of a role in the fourth one. I immediately thought there's no way it's the brother. Like it's especially after you already did that. It's not Gabby, which was very obvious. Of course, it wasn't Gabby. But yeah, I just thought like that was where I'm like, that's going to be my issue with the fourth is like, he's going to do so much of, well, this is what happened to the dad. We're going to see that kill. And this is what happened at the college and all these other kids. The one thing that I did not like with the scripting here with the brother, and maybe that was meant to be, they kept staging, or he would act as if his roommate was like a jock asshole, but there's nothing about that roommate that came up. Like the look of him, sure. But like, he defends him like, oh, you know, we want to take you to the party. He defends him from his shitty girlfriend who just wants to get him on her podcast to talk about
she's opportunistic. Totally.
Opportunistic. He keeps like saying, hey, you know, back off. You're being, you know, opportunistic. You know, he was, you know, slaughtered. He was ashamed of how she acted. I'm like, at no point in this movie did I feel that this dude was actually an asshole. Like he feels like he's going to be, but then I'm like, oh, he's actually not. But then they're like, oh, you're an asshole to him. I'm like, when? He's actually nice
he said
to
when they met at the college, he says, you treat me like shit.
I'm like,
it's like,
when does he treat you like shit?
I mean, okay, he's always trying to fuck the girl in the room, but that's a college thing. We never I should mention the actor that plays him, he's actually rather cute, but I was calling him Spicoli Owen Wilson.
Yeah.
Because he looks like that or whatever. He also has a cute butt, which brings me to the shower scene.
Yeah, that one was pretty
Let's
brutal.
talk about that. What did you think about that?
So I liked the macabre ending of it, of Art,
the blood angel.
Angels out of the blood angels. I thought that was very funny.
That was cool.
It's a case of, again, while I was fine with it, he goes too long with the moments, because then it's like when he's taking the chainsaw and he's basically doing the first one again, but this time with a guy going from the bottom up, and then you see like his genitals being brutalized, and then so I try to avoid doing this because I don't want to be like, well, this is what I would have done. But because it's the boyfriend and it's his girlfriend who is the podcaster who doesn't understand, oh, it's been 5 years. Don't they want to help people or whatever? It's like, get over it. Once they played that, I almost kind of wanted Art to let her live or not really brutalize her as much, because I thought that would be like Art's way of torturing her. Is like, well, now you have to live with this. But now she just kind of gets.
Well, remember, there was that, and I loved this scene as well. Just like the bar scene, there's a scene where he's sort of creeping and listening.
Yes, that was great.
Manipulating him or whatever. But like, obviously at the end, when he like, at the end of that scene, when he sort of like chainsaws her and then he gets up real close to her and he looks at her.
Looks into her. I like that. Like, looking into
what does he smell like? What does it feel
like?
What
is it like looking into death's eyes? I liked that and putting her glasses on her. So I don't mind. I still think that was handled well. I just thought, I'm trying not to criticize
there was no need to flip the boy over and watch his penis like
just because
jangling on the
that was
chainsaw.
100%, just like you said with some of the other stuff. He has a tendency, and this time he's just aping himself. It's like, okay, we get that you're aping. I did love that scene though too, when he was like listening and he's kind of getting excited. He's like, well, I don't want to have sex with her. He's like, oh, like that stuff. It's like that stuff is so
more
good.
of that. We needed more of that. And
or even just like when he gets to the college, he puts the glasses on, he's wearing the Santa suit, and he's just like he's in the demolition, mobile. He doesn't get called, and he's kind of like hunkering around like that. Yeah, that the morbidness of him is kind of very funny, and that's something where Thornton finds his own, and it's thankful that he doesn't get to talk, because if he talked, then he might become more of a Freddy Krueger, but he avoids being a Freddy Krueger in his own thing because he has to use just body language.
But it's weird that Leone didn't have the mindset to have judicious editing in this thing and make sure that that's what I came to see. That is how you become a horror icon, is you get more of those scenes. It was like in Terrifier 2, the Spencer Spirit Halloween scene where he's lingering in the background and you're just, you're tense because you're like, when's he going to explode? When's he going to jump in and start to try to kill somebody? And those moments are few and far between because, as you said, they keep cutting back between, art and, or just the lame family stuff. And then cutting with the supernatural stuff.
And wanting to linger on the scenes. And I think this is where, it's always going to be a generational, maybe it's just us getting older and just also people having different tastes. But I also understand, and I'm kind of just reserved to the fact that we're always with these Terrifier movies and possibly with Leone movies, hopefully just the Terrifier ones, where the kills are going to be lingered on more now, because now that's what that audience wants. So are we now where, I use Saw as an example, but even just slashers in general in the 80s, when it was like, well, we don't really need to see the kills, but like some of that's what we come for. Is this now the next evolution where I'm just going to be like, I prefer when you show it, but don't linger too long because it has more of an impact. But now the crowd wants it to linger longer. Because that's kind of what I felt with that scene. That didn't gross me. It's not even so much that it grossed me out. It was just, it went too long. And I was just like, okay, yeah, I got the point. And it brought itself around because of the way that he looked into the girl's eyes. I liked that. And then the blood angels, that brought it back around. Also, I found it funny that the theater worker who, they always have to come in and check on a screening. That was the scene he had to come check in on. And he didn't seem disgusted by it. So I wonder if he knew that scene was happening. Cause I'm like, I don't think he had to stay for this whole scene, dude. I think he could have bounced, but he stayed for the whole murder. The one that
go ahead.
The one that made me queasy that I wanted to throw back to you was the rat funnel at the end that happened.
The Richard Gere.
Yeah. Or what I said to my friend, which was definitely inspired by Richard Gere, but was you're saying about everything like, oh, it's being inspired by this. It was inspired by that episode of South Park where Mr. Garrison shoves Lemmy Winks the gerbil up Mr. Slave's ass because he's trying to get fired. But this time it's the reverse where we're shoving it down the woman's throat after shoving this too. That one made me queasy just because the idea behind it. And again, it was just that like, you've already brutalized this woman and now this is your bleach moment. And also because I was expecting, which I guess they wouldn't have shown us the insides. I was thinking they're going to go down and maybe crawl out of her stomach, but somehow just slicing her throat and then watching the rats come out of her throat, it was grossed me out more than what I was like. So I'm like, all right, at this point, you still got me with something that's going to make me go, Jesus Christ, dude.
And they were like, first of all, rats really make me crazy because of the tails and everything. This movie lingers on rats like you wouldn't believe. But to see them slide out of her throat and then be all wet and gooey and like all around the set, I was like,
and rats don't even bother me. I'm fine with them. Like you linger on like whatever. Like obviously I wouldn't want to be gnawed by one, but I'm fine with them. So it's not like if they put, hopefully he's not listening to this and has an idea for the fourth one. It's not like they put spiders or tarantulas down her throat. But like,
I was just going to say, Damien Leone, if you put spiders.
Yeah, but even then, like, but I also know, like, I wouldn't want anything in my throat, but especially a rat with its claws and its, and it's like somehow slicing the throat, like you said, being gooey was grossed me out more than I expected. I'm like, all right, I know I'm not going to actually get sick, but even I'm getting a little queasy here. And like, if I were to hear that people got sick during this movie, that would be the scene I would expect they got sick there.
Well, that and the shower scene, which
the shower scene definitely.
Yeah,
but I guess for me, I guess the shower scene, it just like we're going back to it. I was just numb to it. Also because we saw something similar in the first, but like that The fucking rat threw me for a loop. And I think it goes back to that second one where it's just like, it's adding that insult to injury, which is going to become the trademark, where it's just like, it's me going, all right, dude, holy shit. Like,
shout out to Thomas, one of the ushers at the Regal Laurel Cinema, where I go to see my films. But he was like, man, people keep talking about that shower scene. And I'm like, there's crazier stuff in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the shower scene definitely. Can we talk about the weird Die Hard / Blown Away scene where he goes in? What? First of all, why is this in the movie? You could have cut that.
Yeah, you could have cut it because he wanted to kill kids. That's why. And because I think he wanted to, because there is still some bit of amusement with Art just handing out these toys and being like genuine, and then everyone else being like, well, what the fuck is up with this weird dude?
Yeah. Actually, so before you go on, what happens is Art sneaks into the department store and he's got his trademark bag with him, which that's a surprise in that scene as well. But he pretends to be like the mall Santa, which if I saw that as the mall Santa, I'd be like, we're getting you milkshakes. Let's go the other way.
Well, or in this case, I know kids want to see Santa, but most kids I don't think would go near that Santa.
No, fuck
that's
no.
what was weird.
It was disgusting. So he starts handing out presents.
The reason it's obviously in there is because he wanted to show the bomb goes off and it kills these kids. But here's the thing where you didn't even have to cut that scene. It just goes down to you need to have, like you said, judicial editing, because the reason that scene technically exists is because that's where she thinks she sees him. And she's right, even though he's wearing a Santa mask at first, because, oh my God, he's got his bag. So that's how you can transition to she has that PTSD breakdown. And then you go to the scene of him killing the kids. The problem is he doesn't know when to edit scenes down, and he lets it go for too long. He wants the juxtaposition of Art in this costume, this Santa outfit, handing out actual just gifts to the kids, and then the scene with the adults, and then obviously the interview later with Tom Savini. He doesn't know to go. You should have just cut to him handing out the presents really quick, and then it goes off to a bomb, which I still wouldn't have went with bomb because it seemed weird.
It was so strange. I thought he was going to open it and there was going to be like a heart or like,
something like that.
A boob or something, but he opens it and then it explodes. And I was like, what movie am I watching? That was a fantastic fucking explosion.
That's kind of why I didn't like the Clown Cafe as much, or the Tommy guns in the second movie. And then even then, when Clint Howard and the bartender, Stryker, get killed, they just get shot. And then they do the big thing with Daniel Roebuck, and we'll get to that. But like, I think it's also when you watch slasher movies, even like the Maniac Cop movies, there's not that much, gunplay or grenades, just because that feels more, like you said, Die Hard. That's something I expect in an action movie. And it just doesn't, it feels weird in a slasher movie. And I think I tried arguing in the second one, maybe it just felt too grounded. At this point, I don't think it's because it's grounded. It's just when you come to these slasher movies, it's not creative. That's the problem. You come, especially these Terrifier movies, you come for what weird shit are you going to see. Like, it's not common it probably happens, but it's not common for somebody to be hacked up with a machete. But it is common for people to get shot or maybe bombs to go off. So it just doesn't have the right impact in a movie like this. And it just feels so odd to choose it.
So it's interesting. Each of these films has an Art gun moment. And so in Terrifier, it was kind of that Indiana Jones thing, like, come on, buddy, I'm going to fucking kill you. And then he pulls the gun out and shoots her or whatever.
Which at least that worked because it was such a quick moment that it was funny in a dark way that I wasn't as bothered by it in the first. But in the 2 and 3,
and then here he kind of like, one-ups himself by doing that, right? Narratively, script-wise, I think it would have worked better if they had not primed the nitrogen thing with Daniel Roebuck. So let's talk about that. Like, Roebuck is the Santa. He gets tied up, and then he's tortured by getting various parts of his body sprayed by liquid nitrogen, and then obviously having them break or whatever. But we had to sit through the whole demonstration of it with the rat.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't think we needed that because I think people would have been able to put 2 and 2 together. But yeah, I think that was really, which I guess I wonder if that was also supposed to set up, oh, there's also going to be rats later. Again, it's a little bit like you could have reserved yourself there, Leone, not shown it. Because yeah, it did kind of like, it's still a gruesome scene, but it was kind of like, well, I was eventually expecting it. And once I saw him tied up, I'm like, oh, so this is where he's bringing that back in. We didn't need the scene with the rats. Like, it was dumb. And it's a pretty fair play to Daniel Roebuck, man. That's what I'm telling you. You get actors, who are more seasoned, and that makes that scene more terrifying than if it was somebody else, because his screams and pleading feel more genuine because you have, and I hate to say an actual actor, but a more seasoned, respected actor who is just, God, I love Daniel Roebuck. And apparently I never knew this. He was born and raised, I think, Lehigh Valley, here in PA. Because
Really?
I still haven't gone to Shankweiler's, but I guess there's an indie movie that he was in that they're going to show at Shankweiler's one night. And he did like a video for him and goes, I was born and raised around this area. So I'm like, oh, you're one of us. So I like him even more now.
He's
So
a PA boy. I love it.
I wanna meet him someday. He seems lovely, and he clearly loves horror movies. We talked about that when we did the Not a Bomb episode of The Munsters. Like this is something he's passionate about.
We're also going to need to get him and Kyle Gallner in the same room. I think Gallner's from Pennsylvania too.
Hell yeah, I gotta present. And obviously Jonathan Groff, Lancaster native. He comes back. He was just here the other week for a Pride event. But Jennifer Garner also was here. She's not a PA person, but she was here. Just because, we're getting.
Well, she's an Eastie. She grew up in West Virginia and stuff. So
that's probably why.
But I'm gonna expose one other crazy narrative bad scripting moment as well.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the film, because it becomes apparent that, okay, so I'm gonna expose two weird scripting moments.
Expose them all.
I'm gonna expose them all. Leone, if you're listening to this is constructive criticism. Please do better. So after the second film, we learn that Lavera is essentially like the force for good, and she's like King Arthur with Excalibur and the sword. The sword is important because it slays art. Why would you fucking leave it at the old carnival? Why? So in this movie, she's like, oh shit, I gotta go get the sword. Why didn't you keep it with you?
The easiest explanation could just be
she thought it was dead.
She thought it was dead with that, or just the severity of the whole situation. She just plumb forgot. Like you got caught up in the main. But the problem here is it exists mainly as a MacGuffin. Like,
yes,
so she puts it in there.
She goes to get it. She wraps it as a present so nobody thinks of it. And then we find out that Gabby doesn't believe in Santa Claus. She's been snooping around and looking at the gifts years before telling her parents, I know Santa doesn't exist and I've been looking at the gifts, right? And so this sets up the MacGuffin of the final scene where Lavera is tied up. Vicky and Art are there. They've decimated the entire family, killed the brother. And then Gabby decides to figure out to trick them and say, well, I never got to give the gift to whomever or whatever. And then it's the sword, and we know that she's going to open it. It's the sword. She's going to like slash back or whatever. So the second writing point that I think is so ridiculous is the girl Gabby is smart enough to do that, but then later in the scene she walks over to her mother, who's got a goddamn cylinder nailed into her fucking neck, which is open, and there are rats, and she says to Mom, "Wake up, Mommy, wake up." What the fuck?
Yeah, that was bad, especially because it's already been established that she probably knew her mom was dead because she came in seeing it. So again, you can still write that up as just being caught in the moment, but I thought that was weak. And honestly, I even thought like the demons falling for I need to give I know they were trying to play it all one of two ways, that they were taunting her, because even then when they were like, oh, you want to open your gift? Let me sledgehammer your hands. Right. Though it is kind of funny how she went from having mangled hands and hard to open a present to having no issues wielding and throwing that sword.
And
adrenaline, baby.
Fighting with the fucking chainsaw.
But the only other way, I still didn't buy that the demons would have done that. And the only way you could also argue, and maybe they'll try to do it, is that was the real Vicky still slightly, inside trying to fight. But I don't think that's what they were going for. I think it was
I think so. In a film that embraces tropes, that's the trope of the talking villain, right?
Yeah.
The one who's like, I'm going to explain to you what the fuck's going on and toy with you a little bit more to give you a chance to like kill us or whatever.
And I think that's one thing that I tend to not like, even in parodies, is like, well, it works better in parodies because you're just being more overt with it. But like, if you're going to make fun of the tropes or use the tropes, be a little bit more playful with it. Scream sometimes does it well, sometimes doesn't, that franchise. It's just one of those things where it's like just acknowledging the trope doesn't make your writing more clever than it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Everyone can
totally.
acknowledge the trope. And I think that is what it just comes down to. And they just wanted to torture her. But like, again, it was just one of those, would they really fall for it in this moment? But we just need to get to the ending somehow. That's why I thought like the brother was going to come back, and like it wasn't the brother, and he was going to come in and subdue the demons or something. And then they would get but
Yeah. So, the ending. So basically what happens is she vanquishes them. Well, she stabs the shit. First of all, so this is where some of the over the top stuff works. When she and Art are fighting with the chainsaw, obviously Toby Hooper, Chainsaw Massacre, he shoves her face into like the father's split open corpse. I kind of dug that moment. I was like, okay, that's good. I'm on board with that. But Art like escapes, and then he ends up getting on a bus, which looks a lot like the short from Terrifier, I guess, or some All Hallows Eve or whatever have you. And then the woman is reading a book called The Ninth Circle, which is the short that first featured Art the Clown. So, haha, whatever. But that was weird that he just gets on the bus. But the Hellmouth opens, Vicky gets vanquished, and then Gabby falls into it. And out of the myriad, another crazy, dumb scripting moment, out of the myriad of things in that entire living room to try to put down to let Gabby pull up, she uses the sword. What the Christmas lights, the Christmas tree, an umbrella, the poker by the fire, like, and then so obviously she uses the sword and she gives the handle to Gabby to grab, and she's going to try to grab the blade and pull her up, which doesn't work. And then she basically disappears. So I feel like,
and then like Jesus, she takes the crown of thorns off of her head because they put that on her to torture her, and her hands repair themselves,
and then heal.
Stigmata. And even at that point, I'm like, okay, you're going way too fucking heavy with this dumb shit.
Yeah, I was like, you know what? There's supernatural, and then there's like trying to tie it to like religion and shit. Constantine did it the best, if you ask me. Watch that movie.
Because Constantine is actually based. It is religious horror. It's whole grounding. It makes sense for it to do that because that's the whole reason it exists is because of religion. This one is just ham-fisting it in. And it kind of feels like an edge sword, like this is what religion is, like trying to make fun of it. I'm like, yeah, but you're not being clever. And this is coming from somebody who's agnostic, so I'm not offended by it because I don't care why. I want you to be smarter than that.
And here we go with another fart smelling moment. Leonie's like, yeah, I grew up Catholic, and I just thought it'd be cool to put in a. It's like,
here's the thing. I grew up Catholic too, and I had my issues with Catholicism, not so much my family, but I also grew up, and I just kind of got like, I'm not holding on to that in this weird, also, you know what, who else did? Les Craven, but Craven was more fascinated by religion and not so much, I want to just take, I mean, there's a fascination element to it, which this just seems like, I grew up Catholic and now I'm edgy. Like that's,
Craven used broader, like psychological archetypes and really built it into his stories. And even if you don't see them immediately, they're there.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And that segues to, the beginning of this, very In the Mouth of Madness with the sanitarium stuff. He even steals the John Carpenter thing of somebody in frame, and then somebody jumps into the frame to strangle him. So when Jericho gets taken out or whatever, that scare is literally taken from Prince of Darkness and In the Mouth of Madness,
which has just been taken by. I mean, that's just a trope at this point. It's not even a Carpenter. So that's kind of. It's less even like, ooh, Carpenter. Now it's just, this is what horror movies are. This is my trope, because that's
but
such
also
a common...
like Black Christmas. She goes through the whole Jamie Lee Curtis, like he's gonna come after us and we need to prepare ourselves. So it rather than homage-y, it felt a little more rip-offy to me, but that's just me. Did you have a favorite kill?
Tend to think of favorite. I mean, most memorable, even though it grossed me out, would definitely be the rat one. I'm trying to think favorites. I mean, I almost want to say the opening, even though the kills themselves weren't it. It's just that the follow through with it, with him just eating the cookies. Like that's where I think the kills are more unique to me, is the the end result. Like I almost want to go with the bath or the shower scene just because of the blood angels. Like the kills themselves. I mean, I guess if we're gonna go, I would say probably the Roebuck one, just because it was brutal. And if it wasn't telegraphed as much, I think it would flow a little bit better. But it was brutal. The one where he's torturing Roebuck as Santa with the just because I feel like I know I've seen that happen before. Obviously, Jason X too with the 3, but I swear I've seen something similar before. But I think it's just because of how Roebuck sold it, and I did care for Roebuck as a character that like it still kind of impacted me. But yeah, I mean,
I like the shower scene. I thought that was kind of good, even if it went
too long, which is probably the issue with a lot of these. Or if we're being honest with you, the first kid to get killed, where you just hear it, did disturb me the most because I just heard it. I heard the kid screaming and being like the whack, whack, whack. So I'm like, yeah, there's something about not showing the kill and that sequence of just showing the aftermath that can be effective. But yeah,
I really wish Leone had learned from that opening sequence that
but I don't
always have to show everything and go crazy.
But I also feel like that's going to be a common complaint we have. But at least with this franchise, I don't think they're going to get a go with it because that's its bread and butter and what's selling it and why it's saying that's why we would go to certain like slasher movies. But now it's just taking it to the extreme. I'm curious to see once he gets away from Terrifier, if and when he does, if he kind of goes in another way. But I mean, granted, he didn't direct it, but Stream has similar. Not as crazy, but it has some. I mean, there's a kill in Stream, which is funny enough because the killer is played by David Howard Thornton, one of the killers anyway that's doing it. That is as absurd and gross as something in here where they play, let's just say, a childhood game on a person's body. Stream has, and I will say, I had fun with Roebuck in Stream, but I liked him in this more because he's basically playing a drunk in both movies, but that one. It was just like, oh, he's a drunk that, his wife doesn't like him or whatever. And it's like, oh, whatever. Here, I liked it because it's a drunk, but he's still kind of played in more like the downtrodden, like just normal dude. And I just love the fact that he was like, if I'm in the Santa suit, it's like Elvis. If he wants Santa, I'm going to give him Santa. I thought it was endearing that he's just like, there's this creepy clown, but he just thinks it's, like, you almost feel like, does he just think it was a grown adult that was maybe a little like slow or something, and that's why he was trying to be nice to the? But
I think it was simpatico over having to put on a
costume and play a character. But I just love the fact that like he was, just this commitment to it and just how sweet he was. Like I was just like, oh, I like this Roebuck, especially because you already see him purring it up with 2 the ladies who I'm surprised didn't get killed, but I guess I'm glad they didn't because I guess it wouldn't have made sense for Art to stop, kill them, and then play this charade with everyone. So at least learn there.
I think the unsung hero here is definitely David Howard Thornton. If you listen to our other episode, the Terrifier 2 episode, I remarked that he has a really cute pooper and has it is not a bad looking guy. Like outside of the makeup, he's not bad. I think he has a theater background. I would love to see him in something other than this, but he is he's really embodying this Art the Clown thing, and he's doing well. Again, I feel bad for Mike Gianelli. I don't know why. I still haven't gotten to the bottom of why. I didn't listen to the Terrifier 1 commentary, although I may do that. But I don't know why he replaced him. But yeah, David Howard Thornton's pretty damn good in this.
Yeah, and who knows if it would have been the same type of Terrifier, that if he would have taken Art in a different direction that's not as dementedly jovial, so maybe it wouldn't have worked as well, or it would have been a different type of slash. If anything, maybe I would have liked them least because I think Thornton's jovial demonic performance offsets or complements the more absurdity of everything. As opposed to if he was just a more grim clown, then maybe I would be turned off more and would be more, it's just gore for gore's sake. But since it's purporting itself to be this really wacky dark comedy, they kind of land a little bit better for me in that. It's still gore for gore's sake in certain angles, no doubt. But
the director of The Substance, Coralie Forager, said that, you have to add some humor because if it's all just violence like that, it's too intense, right? So Leone at least knows that because you're right. If he was just a grim clown, it'd be a Rob Zombie movie.
Yeah, exactly. Though in the case of like The Substance, they're not really, even comparable because Substance is so much more of a story than it is just a body horror movie.
True. But
I
I
mean,
think,
you know what? That's a good example though, because the Substance definitely wears inspirations on its sleeves. It's very Cronenbergian. There's elements that definitely make you think of Society with Brian Yuzna on that.
Oh, yeah,
But there's enough of a director
New.
stamp that it feels like their own property as opposed to just aping something else. Even if
Right.
there's, because I said it when I saw it with William, I'm like, it might seem it's treading familiar territory in the sense of beauty standards in Hollywood, but the way it's doing it and handling it with its drama and even its body horror feels unique. Even if you could come in here and be like, well, it's like this and that, but I'm like, but it has enough of its own flavor and impact where it kind of stands out.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts on
Oh.
Terrifier 3?
No, I just I know people are thinking Terrifier 4 or one of them's gonna, well, they do anything after 4, which they will. But if for whatever reason 4 ends up being it, 4 I think is gonna spend more time in hell. So I don't think
Definitely. He's gonna rip
I don't
off-
think you're getting your Terror Art Decline in Space just yet, folks. So
Not yet, but you are gonna get ripoffs of Hellraiser and Poltergeist. Mark my words. Mark my
100%.
words. Yes. And if Gabby falls out of the ceiling in Terrifier 4, I'm walking out. Mark my words now. I'm walking the fuck out.
Also, mark my words, folks, when we do Terrifier 4, because we know what you want. He's gonna be like, you know what? I rewatched Terrifier 3 and I have a new appreciation for it. I'm on to you, Jose. I know you.
I mean, listen, if folks, if you listen to our Babylon episode and then check out the Not a Bomb episode where we went, wait, were you on that too?
I was not able to make the Not a Bomb.
Oh, yeah,
I
okay.
wanted to, but it's,
Yeah.
you know why.
Yes.
I'm in a better place now.
Now you are, but I went on to Not a Bomb and revisit Babylon and had a much bigger appreciation for it that second time. So.
And to be fair, that does happen a lot with movies. I'm just being playful. That happens with me on movies. Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is a good example. To a degree, Halloween Ends. I'm still not quite in the like camp, but I'm getting closer. So it happens. But
Yes.
but at
Madame
least
Web. I'm
at
just
least well, I mean, again, I didn't hate Madame Web. I do. It was just there.
Yeah. So unfortunately, even with this discussion, it's still a skip for me. Just wait for streaming, folks.
Yeah.
And for you, Justin?
I'd still say a watch, maybe a soft watch, maybe a little bit softer on it now. But yeah, it's a watch. I mean, honestly, I would want you to see in the theater just to support indie horror since it's doing well. But this also works as a streaming. And I know that was their idea of, hey, we're going to get all the box office in October because that's when people want to see it. And then when it hits Screenbox, it'll hit just in time for the holiday season. So even those that might not have taken the chance might have the, well, it's set on Christmas and I want a Christmas horror. So I see that marketing behind you.
It's Leone have been a good fart for Leone.
Yeah, I think that was, and who knows if that was the Leone decision or if that was somebody else's. Hey,
It was a studio thing because Leone was like, there was so much pressure on this because they were like, it has to release this time. You have to be done by this time and this and that. He said it was really, really stressful for him, but you know what? Welcome to the pseudo Hollywood studio system. Okay.
Welcome to, this
Welcome to filmmaking, folks. All right. So, Red, so wonderful to have you back.
This was great. I wish I would have been curious to see what Emcee's reaction to these would have been, but I will say I can't wait to do another episode with you, Emcee. But it's kind of nice just me and you again because it's been a while as we get to do this again because of me doing the spotlight on and now for something a little bit different every month. But this is the first time since I left the show that you and I had done just an episode together, I believe.
That's right. Awesome. Okay. I would ask you if things were coming up, but you're right. You and I are essentially doing, and now for something a little bit different with John Horgan, that is on his YouTube channel. We did a spotlight on Oliver Reed. Spotlight meaning we each picked a film and then reviewed it. We are segueing to Jeff Bridges, and I think we're going to do Winter Kills.
Yeah, you said we're going to do Winter Kills, which I'm curious to revisit because I quite like that. And then it will be months down the line, but after Bridges will be my spotlight choice because that was yours, which should be no surprise, people. It's Nicolas Cage.
Of course. And I'm
Just like I don't
dying to hear what you're going to pick.
There's quite a few choices, but I think I have mine in mind. But we'll see. Months down the road, I might change my mind.
I have one in particular just because every time I show this film to somebody, they are like, what the fuck did I just watch?
That can be your cage pick if I don't choose it.
Ah, there you go. I got it. All right. So here we go. Our outro. To remember these.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So if you love us, you'll certainly love our Podfathers, A Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema and Not a Bomb, who I got to tell you, I think every episode we mentioned those guys.
Yeah.
GGTMC and Not a Bomb. And then the OG's Night of the Living podcast, as well as Wild Dream podcast, Raiders of the Podcast. We got to get Kevin onto this show. Backlook Cinema podcast with Zoe, who has been on the show. He joined us for Beetlejuice, and now for something a little bit different, which we've talked about. Caliber 9 from Outer Space, Feminine Critique. And then I don't know if you guys saw this, but Harry made an announcement on Death by DVD. There may not be any new episodes until either December or next year. And that's because he's on a hush hush special project. So if you listen to his most recent episode, which is only 20 minutes, I can't remember what he said about it, but I've congratulated him on it, and I'm excited to hear about it when he can talk about it. And then, of course, this is a great back catalog of podcast shows to listen to. Although there are no new episodes, they do have an active Facebook page if you want to join them. And I'm talking about Married with Clickers, The VHS Files, Silva and Gold, Cult of Muscle, and Friends with Cinefits. And Red, do you want to do our tie-up?
All right. Well, we hope we didn't terrify you away from listening to the show. We hope you always remember that we hope that you never skip, you always listen, and that you remember that you are the plus. I might have been a little rusty there, but I still brought the thunder.
Just a little bit. Rusty is still kind of a red color, right?
Yeah, see? Rusty Red. That's my new nickname, Rusty.
Rusty Red. And then I guess Emcee's would be, he would say, support exhibition, buy physical media, and we will see you at Stuber's Bar.
Ooh, yes.